Good evening and welcome to everyone here. My name is Dalia Azran. I'm the Director of Public and Professional Programs at the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program. I want to extend a warm welcome to our museum members and to those tuning in on our live web broadcast. This evening's program is in collaboration with Battery Dance, a Lower Manhattan-based dance company, and it will be followed by a restaged performance of Pavilion by Carmel Small. Tonight, we are joined by 4 panelists: Jonathan Hollander, Tadej Brdnik, Samir Chatterjee, and Yousif Sheronick, each of whom were essential in bringing Pavilion to life. Every year from 1982 to 2001, Battery Dance held a public dance festival at the World Trade Center Plaza, celebrating art and the vibrancy of the city. On September 26, 2001, just 2 weeks after the September 11th attacks, the company presented Pavilion, a spontaneous performance held on the edge of the frozen zone, the area around the World Trade Center closed to the general public. Nearly 25 years later, we gather to reflect on that moment, what it meant then, and what it continues to mean today. Through conversation and movement, we honor not only the legacy of 9/11, but the power of art to bear witness, to heal, and to unite. Jonathan Hollander is an acclaimed choreographer, founder, and artistic director of Battery Dance and the Battery Dance Festival, which is now New York City's longest-running public dance festival. He has been active in bringing dance into both New York City public schools and abroad, and has been recognized by the U.S. State Department and foreign governments for his contributions to cross-cultural exchange through dance. Tadej Brdnik is a professional dancer from Slovenia, and since moving to New York, he has performed with the Martha Graham Dance Company as principal dancer and Battery Dance Company. He has taught extensively in the United States, EU, Far East Asia, India, and Brazil, and currently teaches at LaGuardia High School. Samir Chatterjee is a tabla player from India, and he travels widely across the world throughout the year performing in numerous festivals as a soloist or with other outstanding musicians from other Indian and non-Indian musical traditions. He is the founder and director of Chandayan, an organization dedicated to promoting and preserving Indian culture and music. Yousif Sheronick is a percussionist, composer, producer, and educator. Having studied classical percussion through a master's degree at Yale, he went on to study music from Brazil, India, Africa, and the Middle East, which he incorporates into his playing. As an educator, Yousif has conducted residencies and master classes at top universities, including Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Jonathan, Tadej, Samir, and Yousif in conversation with our Museum Director, Clifford Chanin.
Thank you, Dalia. Welcome, everybody. This program is really quite fitting. It is the concluding program of our spring season. And I think with the performance we're going to see at the end of the program, it will be both commemorative and joyous, I think, and very, very well appropriate to what we hope to accomplish here in the museum. And you're all welcome. Thank you for coming. This is a really remarkable, extended cultural expression over the course of time. But Jonathan, let's start with you, because Battery Dance and your relationship with many of the performers here precedes 9/11, as does the dance that you performed in the Frozen Zone. So tell us a bit about Battery Dance. You had a relationship as a company with the World Trade Center. And we'll talk to each of you about how you came into the project that emerged within a few weeks of 9/11. But start us in the pre-9/11 time, Jonathan.
So Battery Dance was founded in this area in 1976, and we've always had a very strong affiliation and a sense of purpose in terms of performing for a community in an area that really didn't have theaters or traditional spaces for the performing arts. So it was very natural that we would find ourselves eventually to the World Trade Center Plaza, where so many thousands of people would gather at lunchtime. And the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey was our partner at the time, and they presented a stage for us. And it was very much art in the workplace, a lunchtime event. And we would pick our location for the stage to make sure that there was shade for the audience and the dancers. And we had New York Theater Ballet and many other wonderful dance groups. I see Laurie Belalove is here, and she and her colleagues who are the, what shall I say, they carry the tradition of Isadora Duncan forward, and we had a remarkable Isadora Duncan program here. The most important thing was that it became human. This massive space became very human scale.
Let me
with
show,
dance.
just because we have a couple of pictures of that, and I want, as we're speaking, I'll just tell the control room, there are photos 3, 4, and 5, you can rotate through them. But that's really an important piece of this because, and I wonder if others would have comments as well, you know, what was it like to perform underneath these gigantic towers which dwarfed everything, much less a dance performance?
We felt small, but
but you know, when unexpected things happen in places like that, the world changes its grandiose space. It actually focuses. So when that music comes on alive and the dancer or a performer starts performing, the world becomes very focused in what's happening in that space. It's almost like the life that we are so accustomed to live freezes for a second. Mm. And in places that are very open, when people with their sandwiches maybe in their hands are ready to, you know, find a place that they're going to have their lunch, stop on the track, enjoy the performance, maybe give the clap, smile, and then continue with their lives.
Let me ask though, what was it like to dance in that space?
From a performance perspective, you're just hoping to get the attention, right? Because you never know what happens in the day. But it is special because you do feel the difference in the energy of the space when the performance starts happening. You know, you see the sea of people just walking, and suddenly that becomes quieter and more focused on the performance. And then, as fast as that energy started, it dissipates and goes away. So
musically performing there, I had one incident I remember right now. I was performing with two profound Indian classical vocalists, and as we were setting up, we were a little hesitant. Will this be the right atmosphere for Indian classical music? Will the sound of the music, because we all play acoustic instruments, how will they be lost? Actually, quite the opposite. And it took us literally 2-3 minutes to go into the music. And it became more profound in a sense because the space by itself had a tremendous impact on the other performance on stage with me. And that together brought us as a team in the journey through music. And it was almost like a tribute to the magnificence, to profundity. And it was close to late afternoon, and we were performing late afternoon ragas, you know, very meditative, I remember, very distinctly. And everybody listening, standing or sitting down, went into that mode.
Well, it does seem like somehow the interaction of the monumentality of the space brings out something fundamental about the artistic expression that you're there for. There seems to be very little that's extraneous to what you're doing because of how big everything else is.
And I think it also challenges the idea, the notion that a space is for something, like for commerce. And that was my issue because I moved into a space on Stone Street with my wife at the time, and there was nothing cultural around us. So we had to create culture, and we had to test whether the community would respond. And it was almost addictive because if you perform in a small black box theater, you might get 100 people. But if you performed outdoors in the Wall Street area at lunchtime, in those days, you could get 1,000 people. So it drew us back year after year, and Battery Dance started doing these kinds of programs on its own, and then quickly realized there was a huge vacuum that we needed to try to fill, and that's how we created the Battery Dance Festival. At the time, it was called the Downtown Dance Festival, and it's going to be happening this summer, the 44th year. So it's New York's longest running public dance festival.
So let me ask you, we come to 9/11 and the home of this festival, the lives around it, catastrophe. Your studio is downtown. You are in the frozen zone. Each of you are connected to what would come just a short few weeks later in terms of your performance. I'm not asking specifically about your 9/11 stories, though please share whatever you'd like, but I'm wondering at what point in response, your own personal response to 9/11 and what had happened, you began thinking about something you could do creatively to express whatever it is you wanted to express at that moment.
Well, I think for a dance company, as you said, we were in the frozen zone. I also lived there with my family, and I heard the planes go over the head of our building, and then a thump, and my daughters were in the PS 234 that was a couple blocks away. So, there was a tremendous sense of trauma that I experienced and my family experienced. But the dance company itself, what could we do? How could we go on? Where was the appetite for doing what we normally did? And I think that there was a feeling that we had to do something for our community, and for ourselves, a cathartic experience. And that's when I reached out to Tadej and Samir about Pavilion, because I thought that piece had something spiritual in the music and in the approach of the dance that would fit the moment. But then where could we put it? How could we place it? How could we locate it in the frozen zone? So there were all kinds of problems that you couldn't come south of Canal Street without going through the National Guard and with papers to say that you belonged in Lower Manhattan. So I remember we talked on the phone, and I faxed papers saying, to Samir and eventually to Yousif and Eric Finney, who also performed, and Tadej, that would give them permission to come to the area.
Mm-hmm. Let me just, because I would like to hear from each of them about the outreach. So something is cooking in Jonathan's head, and he's reaching out to you. Start with Yousif at the end there. I mean, what are you thinking about what you wanted to express and what you might be able to contribute? And did you recognize right away that this would be an opportunity to do something?
I don't think right away, because I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen. So Jonathan got a hold of us, and one of the great things about this piece is like we're always thinking of like how we're going to get to the space. So I think we drove down there, but all the instruments are very small, so it was really easy to maneuver around. What I remember the most is that there was just like craziness going on everywhere, in my head, and like watching things on television and trying to set up and going into this area. And it's wonderful when you hear the piece. It's like there's like just so much going on, so much activity. And then when you finally sit down and start playing, that's when everything else disappears. So this is what I really took from it, is I started playing, and everything else that had been going on in my head from all of this the last few weeks just went away. And all I heard was beautiful music, beautiful dancing, and it was just like this beautiful, serene moment. And then it stops, and then chaos starts going on again.
Yeah.
So it was a really beautiful moment for me, just personally, to just like meditate and listen to this. And I just really, really love this piece of music that he wrote. And I got to share it with Samir, who I consider, even though I didn't study with him, I consider him a teacher because I learned so much about Indian music from him. And to play with our departed friend, Eric Finney, who was also playing that day. It was just completely special.
For me, it was definitely an opportunity. When he called me, I was really struggling and in deep agony, not being able to do something. And he gave me that opportunity. And it didn't take me too long to decide on this. He just asked for a piece of music, and this is the one that came to me right away. And so for several factors, it's a short, not too long. And I was commissioned by Eric Finney and his company, Ethos Percussionist, to write this piece as a tailpiece, as an encore or finale to their performances we were doing at the time. And I was living in Jackson Heights, Queens at the time, and just on a sudden moment, the melody came to my mind, and I held on to it. Sometimes, melodies come and go, but this one kept haunting, kept ringing in my mind, and gradually it took its own shape, and first part and the second part. And then we had to move into the studio to record, and I chose one of my dear friends who we don't have today, but we may get to listen to his music, Ramesh Misra, who played the sarangi, the Indian violin. So when the melody came out of his instrument, it became even more haunting. And so when I got that call from Jonathan, this was the music that needs to be presented. And the impact, the effect of the music, as I remember, at the end of the performance, people came up to us to hug and sob. It brought tremendous release and relief to them. People forgot how to cry. So we helped them to cry.
Yeah. Tadej?
Actually, it's kind of weird to go back because I realized this particular experience working on the first version of the piece, as well as what it became as part of performing it for 9/11 Frozen Zone. The first part was, here I am, a Slovenian living in New York, dancing on the music that has traditional Indian rhythms. And to me, I always take that as a great responsibility to do it right. And I do remember us rehearsing in the studios and how that was utmost importance that I do it right. And when conversation with Jonathan happened from 9/11, I was actually quite sick. And I actually had fever performing. But something else happened in my life is that one of my best friends, as the 9/11 happened, he was actually late for work. And as he was walking out of the subway, the collapsing of the tower, he witnessed the collapsing of the tower. And he ran away, and I lived in this village at that time, and he ended staying with us. And I felt hopeless. And I'm an optimist, and I am a go-getter, and you give me a project, I'll figure out the way how to do it. But here I was, not able to really do anything. And when Jonathan calls, I thought this could be something I can do something about. And in all truth, I don't remember the performance. I don't remember how I felt. I only remember my feet were very cold and that there was a certain sense of being a part of something that could start healing. Even if only for those 100 or so people that were scattered around.
Yeah.
I felt that I was able to be a part of someone's healing, also mine.
So after the performance, as we were packing and loading our car with all the instruments we brought in, and we're just about to leave, and then the owners of the corner restaurant, husband and wife, both came running after us. No, you can't leave like that. We have set up tables for you. Please come and have breakfast. Yeah. That was the spirit. Yeah.
And the carol music that had been setting up the stage for us for our traditional festival when we were at other locations, they figured out a way to bring staging, because this piece, as you'll see when Carmel performs it, is a very technical piece. It's a very demanding piece, and it could not be performed on the cement. We had chosen a spot at Franklin Station that's like a traffic island, and we chose it because it's surrounded by residences, and it could be seen as an urban arena, and that's what it became that morning. And we timed it to start at exactly the time that the first plane went in.
8:46, yeah.
Yeah.
And the view corridor facing Tadej and the musicians would have had the towers in the space, and it was empty, blue sky. So there was a sense of tragedy
And tranquility, I think.
and serenity.
Let me ask, the piece that was performed was called Pavilion, which existed before 9/11.
Correct.
And so what led you to choose that piece? And today afterwards, I'd like to ask you, you had performed it before, but now you're performing it under other circumstances. So I'd like to hear about what that difference was. But first, Jonathan, tell us about the piece itself.
Well,
The piece was, as it was composed, it was titled after my mother's first name, Jyotsna, Moonbeam. And then later on, it became identified with her generous and loving and graceful personality. So it got titled later on as Ma, Mother.
so that was the character of the music and the dance that I choreographed with Tadej, because it wasn't something that just came out of my body. It was something very much of a conversation between the two of us, was a response to that music.
It's
So,
set to 7-beat cycle.
yeah, 7 beats.
7 is heaven.
We worked very hard on it. And first of all, in that moment with Traffic Island and getting people there and so forth, a solo was the thing to do. And secondly, Tadej was the performer that I felt had the depth and profundity that would feel right at that moment, because we as artists are always thinking about how our work is going to be received. And in this case, we had to be very careful about ourselves and about the people who would be witnessing it, in order to give them something that was cathartic and not something that would in any way offend. Yeah. So I think I definitely knew people who were victims of the attack on the towers, and I felt a sense of responsibility. And this was my choice.
And yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for giving us the...
Tadej, your performance.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the pavilion as it existed before this experience and after, it's for me, it's a piece that has performing of the piece that has much greater layers. And I think as a performer, you're looking for new inspiration. That was definitely not something that I was looking forward to experience. However, I feel that I carried that mood and maybe the experiences that I was not fully aware of into later performances of the same piece, and became associated with 9/11. And it's interesting, a few steps forward, I choreographed the first piece for the Battery Dance Festival, and it also was premiering outside as part of the Battery Dance Festival's offering. And I used 2 long benches that started as upside down as towers, because that vision of the sun behind the towers is something that I always remember as a New Yorker, how it all felt to see that. And actually that memory of performing there continued in other art forms as well, not just this particular piece?
I have distinct memory of that performance that morning. Physically, the temperature and the chill, and also the light of the sun at that particular moment, and the smell of the town, of the city at that time. That was a major factor for everyone. And the sound as we reverberated through the walls, surrounding walls, and the faces we saw watching and listening.
Yousif?
Yeah, I think it was the music. I'm sorry. The music is what actually brought people out of their homes, because it was so unlikely. Instead of hearing
I'm getting
the
goosebumps
construction vehicles and the security vehicles and so forth, to hear these beautiful sounds.
And I don't know how that happened, but there were such loud noises that were used after it happened to bring stuff out of the zone. There was no sound happening that morning. It almost felt like that everything just stopped and the offering was able to take place. And
it was truly an offering. I was going to use that word. It was a prayer. It was a prayer, yes.
Yeah, so you might think with 3 drummers and 1 vocalist that it's going to be fast. There's going to be a lot of fast drumming, but it's the opposite. It's a very slow, meditative piece, and this is one of the things that I love about it so much, because it allows us to breathe. So when we would do our go on tour with Samir, we would do these where 4 percussionists plus Samir would come as a guest, and Ramesh, and have some very active pieces. But the very last piece of the concert would be the slow, meditative Jyotsna, which had a lot of breath to it. So even though it's in 7, I think it's also very, very primal, because it was just 1 melodic instrument and percussion. It's something that's been done in history, and especially with Sanghamitra singing, the voice and the drum goes back for centuries and centuries. So for me, there's a lot of history and a lot of ancient vibes that go along with this piece as well, which works so well with the dance. It's beautiful.
And this is the first time that Tadej has passed on the choreography to our youngest dancer, our newest dancer, Carmel Small. And for me, watching Tadej coaching Carmel, and this generational passing of a story, passing of a memory, passing of choreography, has been really beautiful to watch. And as Battery Dance approaches its 50th anniversary, it's these kinds of memories of significant things that we didn't know were so significant at the time. So I'm grateful.
Before this panel, we were giving a tour of this very thoughtful museum. And I need to say that I have avoided going in the museum. It took me a while to go to what is the outside of the museum to make the connection again. And I didn't really realize that I just kind of was not ready without realizing that I was not ready. But what was so beautiful about it in conversations, it is the stories. It is the stories that we're passing on through this museum as we are. And that is a nature of dance. It is stories and experiences that we're passing to next generations.
Well, I think we find here, as time passes in particular, that education increasingly can be seen as a form of commemoration and remembrance.
Yeah.
And certainly our work here on the large scale is the transmission of this story to the next generation, of whom there are many now.
Right.
And likewise, in terms of the performance and the choreography of what was a remarkable moment in a terrible time. Let me ask each of you, starting at the end with Yousif, what did you take away from this experience, whether in that immediate moment in your interactions with the audience or subsequently in the years since?
I think what I took away is this idea of music as being healing. So as a percussionist, I came out of university, and my main goal was to just play concerts the whole time. And And really, for me, as I said, with this performance in particular, like I felt it was more meditation. For me, it was great that I did it for everybody else, but it was my chance to get away and just to have, however long this piece is, it's short, to myself, and it was very, very therapeutic. So along the way, I'm a frame drummer. That's one of my specialties, and frame drums have been used in healing for centuries with the Sufis and the shamans and the South Italians doing the tarantella to get away the bite of the mythical tarantula. So I set up a frame drum school, which is now people from around the world come to this frame drum school online. And many of the people that come, they tell me that they use it for therapy. They use it for kirtans, they use it for sound baths and music meditation, or they'll take it and use it for to go into a nursing home to play for people. And so for me, this whole idea of music and healing has grown on me, and it didn't quite have that effect when I was young. So I'm really glad now to be able to, anytime somebody comes and says, I've used your music and your teachings to help other people, I think this is where I've gone, is from this we were playing for others and I didn't quite realize what I was doing, to now I really realize it and I promote it almost more than anything else at this point.
Shamir?
For me, as I was telling earlier, I had a follow-up on this, my visits to Afghanistan. And I went there several times since 2008, after the Taliban left the first time. And the idea was to hand over a musical instrument in the hands of the orphans and street children before they picked up AK-47. And through several years of our work there, together with Dr. Ahmed Sarmast, who became instrumental in finding Afghan National Institute of Music, those orphans, this was our dream, that they will come and perform here at the Carnegie Hall Kennedy Center, which they did. Within 5 years' time, they came and performed for full houses. And now, in this present situation, they had to relocate in Portugal, close to Lisbon, and they're equally vibrant, boys and girls, men and women, enjoying equal privilege of studying music and performing. So in the beginning, you can imagine, when I went there in 2008, not rubbles, it was dust. Yeah. Everywhere there was a bullet hole and horror. What human beings can do to another human being, the atrocity of that. So carrying all of that within myself has been quite difficult, but challenging, but that's what we do in our creative world, that I have always preferred to keep myself open 360 degrees to, I thought that I have the ability to process all of that and give it an expression, which I have been doing.
I'm a firm believer that art heals, and I had a great fortune to have a great performance career, mostly as a principal dancer with the Martha Graham, which took me to all the stages that a dancer like myself wants to perform, from Paris Opera to the top of Acropola. And those things were great. I experienced them. But I realized, as I'm looking back on my performing career, it was association with the Battery Dance Company that reminded me that art can be used as a vehicle to make change, to heal. And through the program of Dancing to Connect, I was able to go to zones that dealt with different types of issues. And one, notably, I worked in India in this project with victims of sexual trade, young girls between age 13 and 18, in which we use the dance as a way to communicate in a new way, not traditional Indian way. But to make that change, to be able to be that agent to create change in these young girls, that to me was the most valuable things that I got from this art form. To be able to not to just inspire others, but to offer them a different way of processing, which, again, art, I believe it does.
Beautiful.
I'm thinking about Yousif's frame drum, and just, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, Battery Dance had frame drummers marching across a bridge between Germany and France as part of the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II and the liberation of Auschwitz, the liberation of France. And it was the culmination of a Dancing to Connect program that brought together 120 students from France and Germany in this creative process. So drumming has continued to be an important part of what we do. And just the honor for Battery Dance to be part of something so significant in world events in Europe, and now being here. When I came out onto the plaza yesterday after the rehearsal with Carmel and Tadej, some kind of wave of emotion came over me about being here in this spot, being there on the plaza. And I'm sure everyone has experienced that with the waterfalls and the incredible trees, because I knew this space. My young daughters in strollers, my ex-wife and myself used the plaza in many different ways. The buildings themselves, you were asking about the dancing in the buildings. There was a time when we had Kathakali dancers from India, and I don't know if you know, but in this form it takes 2 or 3 hours to make up their faces, and that was done in the mezzanine of one of the World Trade Centers, where these dancers were lying on their backs on this red carpeted area. And just the personal and the small intimate human experience and the massive almost brutalist element of this architecture was a stunning experience and way to claim the space for dance and for human beings.
We're going to, in a moment, go to performance, but I don't know, Jonathan, if you want to set this up a little bit, but I'd also like you to tell us a little bit about Carmel Small, who is the dancer who has inherited this piece from Tadej, if you will.
So Carmel joined Battery Dance at the beginning of the year, and he has even though he's very young, he has a very rich background of performance. He graduated from LaGuardia and went on to SUNY Purchase. And so he's had a wonderful training, and everything that he's done with Battery Dance, including running a Dancing to Connect workshop in Germany, has shown what a phenomenal human being he is and what a talented dancer. And just watching the two of them working together, because Tadej is a unique, incredible dancer and somebody who has always stood out with charisma and just physicality, and passing that on, this physical experience, this musical experience, this spiritual
The
experience.
little experience I have of working with him, he transcends technicalities.
And that's true of Carmel as well, even though Carmel is so young in his career, but he's tremendous.
Today you are a teacher, so it's not uncommon to have young people working with you, but this was a dance that was so personal to you, and now passing it along. Tell us about that.
It's actually my greatest joy. When I stopped dancing in 2015, I'm a person of hard stops. I did not want to be dragged off stage. I wanted to be desired on stage, and that was my choice, to live and to create a secondary career for myself. So to me, passing on my experience, my knowledge is really my passion. And to see someone else, in this case, Mr. Small, is that I want to see the new interpretation of the work that I have done. So what you will witness is, yes, it is true to all the stories that I carry from Jonathan's perspective, from music perspective. But I also, as a teacher, need to give the new voice the voice. So that I was trying to be that person, to be true to the rhythm structures, true to the intent that Jonathan had, but also allowing him to have its own say in this work.
Well, we're going to see it.
Passing on legacies, to quote David Attenborough, this is the closest we can get to eternity.
Indeed. Well, we're about to get a little closer. We're going to take a moment here to clear the stage, but we should really thank Jonathan Hollander, Tadej Brdnik, Samir Chatterjee, and Yousif Sheronick for their wonderful work that we're about to experience.
Thank you.